So the Wisconsin idea is the sense that the university, because it is a state university, it is funded by tax money, it has an obligation to serve not just the students who are on the campus, it has an obligation to serve everyone around the state.
And it comes out of the progressive movement of the early 20th century. Progressives believed that, well, progress was possible, that this wasn't a Darwinian world of the jungle, that reform was possible, this was a human-created world, and if we created it, we could make it better.
I think the interesting thing about this is that they recognized it was more than just practical things. So beginning in the 1890s, we have university faculty traveling all over the state. In the 1890s, think about the transportation that existed in the 1890s. And they would deliver a series of lectures in small towns all over the place on ancient Greek literature, on geology, on German literature, on art, on history.
The university has a role in the larger community, that it's not simply an ivory tower of knowledge, that it's an investment in the entire community, and that if we invest in this community, we can make Wisconsin a better place.
So this begins at the Madison campus, and gradually Madison began opening what they called centers. So the first one I think was in Wausau, and then there was one where the Parkside campus is now.
It gets back to that notion of the much talked about and occasionally actually followed through American value of equality.
Places in Barron County, in Richland County, in Marshfield, in Marinette, all over the state, there's a sense that the university has an obligation to provide access.
These trained experts could come from anywhere. They didn't necessarily come from the wealthy and the powerful. Somebody, who had no money, who was working, as a laborer on a farm, could turn out to be exactly the expert with the trained expertise that you needed to solve some huge problem. And you should reach out to those people and make sure they have access to education. And what the colleges were designed to do was to give those people a chance to get into that educational system.
So students who did not have the financial resources to move to a city and live in the dorms or in an apartment and take classes, they benefited from an equivalent education for their first 2 years by people who did their own research, but whose primary focus was on teaching. The tuition was lower. They lived at home. So it was an affordable way to provide at least half of your college education where you were.
And that's why you see these 2-year campuses being put in fairly small places, out-of-the-way places. It benefits the smaller, more rural communities.
I think what we need to remember about the Wisconsin idea, it's a commitment. A century ago, the people of Wisconsin said, we want to have a great university. And we want that university to reach everybody in the state. Everybody in the state has a stake in the University of Wisconsin system, not just the small number of students that are there on campus taking classes.
Let's go ahead and call the meeting back to order. As you all know, I believe this board must be focused on reforms. Focus on reforms and be bold. Whether it's tenure or our executive hiring practices, it's our job to help bring the system into the 21st century. President Cross's proposal this afternoon is the next step in that effort. He and his leadership team have found a way to make our system more efficient and serve students and communities more effectively without closing any doors.
This afternoon, I will present a proposal to restructure a major part of the University of Wisconsin system. It is potentially the most significant reorganization we've considered since 1971. With their distinct transformation, lower cost, diverse regional presence, and the devotion of their faculty and staff to this noble mission, the UW colleges exemplify the UW system's commitment to providing wide access to affordable, quality higher education for all Wisconsin residents. Let me be blunt. Closing campuses would violate one of our core principles, our commitment to provide quality higher education that is accessible and affordable no matter where you live in Wisconsin. Furthermore, closing campuses would remove a vital economic and cultural anchor in these communities. Indeed, our presence in these communities has never been more important. We need them, and they need us.
The UW-Platteville-Richland campus will close entirely next year.
UW Green Bay is suspending in-person instruction this fall at its Marinette campus.
And also ending in-person classes for UW-Milwaukee's Washington County campus, that's in West Bend, and UW-Oshkosh's Fond du Lac campus.
The University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee announced today that its Waukesha campus will close in spring of 2025.
Start in Madison and head west on Highway 14. Follow the train tracks into the Driftless area, a beautiful part of Wisconsin untouched by glaciers. Take the side roads and you'll find yourself treated to beautiful rolling hills and deep valleys, the heart of Driftless country. Enter Richland Center, a city with a long history of progressive rabble-rousing. On the west end of Richland Center is the two-year community college once known as UW-Richland before it was merged with a nearby four-year university. Richland was the first campus to be closed under new system president Jay Rothman. Now, on the eve of its closure, I'm meeting my old friend Marnie Dresser and her son Wendell as they clean out her office.
I remember this when I first met you, because I was so impressed by how, like, you had everything ready to go.
Yeah.
That was before I was a tenure track. And
yeah.
When I got hired, I was like, I'm going to do what Marnie did. I never did. I forgot.
Well, I think it probably looked better than it was.
Okay.
A lot of stuff got archived and never reused.
Yeah.
But it does look good.
It looks great.
I think it still does sort of symbolize the three parts of our job, right? Teaching, service, writing, professional development. So Wendell sort of grew up on this campus and was an amazing place to be a parent. Like, he would come to campus with me and there was a coat rack on wheels outside the conference room over there. And he'd love to push it. And so he would push it around the hallway and I could hear him. So even if he was 3 or 4, I had no concern, and then soon enough I'd hear him on the far side, coming back around, and he'd check in again. And do you remember Scott? Was he here? Kind of
I remember
amazingly good professor, researcher, colleague, went off to do miscellaneous things, but then was teaching part-time. So I felt really lucky that Wendell could take a class with him. So one of the activities they had to do, early in the fall semester was go ask miscellaneous people, how long is your commute? Do you carpool? Just questions like that. And I guess a lot of the students who were, college age students were a little bit, I don't know people yet. I don't know. But Wendell and another son of a faculty member were just like, this is our place. We know, so they just came over here and got all their, it felt like their space. When we were under 100, 75 students, I went to judge some high school event. And so I was meeting students who certainly could have come here, but one of them wanted to be an art major. I'm like, well, we don't have art classes anymore. You know what? So it's just like you couldn't recruit. And nobody wanted more students here more than me. Initially, Platteville took us very seriously when we said we need our own dean, we need a director of student services. They said yes to those things, and then both those things ended up going away. I felt really personally responsible for trying to keep the campus open. You know, I've been here since I was 26. I love the place. It's important to the community. So I was trying to teach well, trying to be a writer, and then just scrambling to do anything I could ever think of to try and help.
Marnie watched every single state budget cut devastate her campus. She tried her best to make the merger with UW-Platteville work. Marnie is emblematic of the kind of professor that you found on the Richland campus. She not only was a teacher, but she also cared deeply about the college itself. And it was clear from our conversations that she believed her son Wendell would someday have a chance to benefit from what UW-Richland had to offer. But when the college closed, Wendell dropped out.
I'm going to go to college probably at some point, but not right now. I'm currently working and in the process of writing a novel.
Okay. What is it about? I'm just curious.
Don't worry about it.
Okay. Oh, gotcha. You want to stay?
Yeah.
Can I get a genre? Would you?
Post-apocalyptic.
After UW-Platteville announced the Richland campus was closing, services ended, buildings emptied out, but Marnie kept the Wisconsin idea alive by giving her remaining students the best education possible.
One of my really promising creative writing students didn't know if she wanted to go past her associate degree. And I was always very respectful about that. We had lots of people who came here for lots of reasons, and sometimes they just wanted a college degree. An associate degree is a perfectly valid college degree. It's a good transfer tool, but it's also, you reached a good stopping point. She said, well, I would love to go to Madison, but I can't. I just couldn't. It's too scary. I'm like, well, what's scary about it? And so she would tell me what was scary about it. And she was such a talented writer. I said, you know what? How about I drive us to Madison and I take you to where you would take creative writing classes and introduce you to one of their professors is a friend of mine, their director of undergraduate creative writing, and just say hi. So once she saw, you figure out where you're going to park, and then you walk to the building, and then once you're inside the building, it's the scale that she was used to. So she was fine. And they were happy to welcome her. She went there, she got her degree.
What would you say a rural community loses when they lose their community college?
Oh, it loses quite a bit. We could start with some good jobs at the university or at the college, right? I mean, that's sort of the first thing.
What's nice about the 2 years is they are very embedded in their campus, in their community.
Athletic facilities, cultural facilities, the arts, all these things that, particularly in a rural area, may not exist much at all outside of the two-year school, right? They're institutions for the community.
Education creates communities. School systems create communities.
The band program was made up partly of students, but a lot of them were community members.
We would have the 4-H drama was always done here on our campus, and that brought in a lot of people who otherwise never set foot here.
When we had 500 students, I mean, you've got students, they're shopping, they're buying gasoline, they're getting their car fixed, they're buying clothes, they're going to the movie.
In places like Richland Center, or Marshfield, or Marinette, they're the lifeline, if you will, for the people in that community. Every campus had a continuing education department. So over the years, I had many retired people saying, I want to learn more. So I'm not here for college credit. I already have a degree. I'm retired, but I want to learn more about Wisconsin history.
And a lot of the program work, and the Wizarding Academy, that's something like that we did for so long, you know. And they would show up on the first day. We would have a sorting. We'd have kind of tables that served as our host tables. They would get into their houses, and then we would sort of start. We'd usually have a theme or a project that they would work on.
It introduces kids to this idea, first of all, that they belong on a college campus, that this is not something reserved for mysterious, wealthy, powerful others. This is something that they can do, that their friends can do, that they can enjoy being at, that the campus becomes theirs in a sense.
We did that every summer, usually a couple weeks, and there were so many kids, who came every year and were just like, I remember this one kid, Jack, was like, this is the greatest day of my life.
It tells them, look, this is your place. And you shouldn't have to worry about, whether your parents are CEOs somewhere or state legislators. This is your place.
In one year we did one was called like the missing scene, where they had to imagine something from the books in the movie that we knew happened, but that wasn't shown. So they had to write the scene and then act it out.
So you do these camps and these college for kids. What are you teaching them? You go to a college campus and something interesting happens. They get older, you can start building on that. Say, you know what is interesting? Here's a subject. This is interesting. Does it interest you? Oh, we got another subject. We can look and see if that would interest you. And you start to pull them into this idea that they can be educated, that they can learn, that they can make use of their talents, and that they can take those out into the larger community.
Voter drives and sports and burlap Olympics thrived at the Richland campus for 50 years, and with it, the Wisconsin idea. And at that fateful 2017 Board of Regents meeting, UW-Platteville's chancellor emphasized this community bond.
We need to build trust in those communities, so I'll be visiting those campuses and communities next week if you approve this proposal moving forward. Primarily to listen. I am excited about this because most of the last 2 years I've been visiting.
5 short years later, the Richland campus closure was announced. But Richland Center, known for its rabble-rousing, fought back.
So this, to me, is the canary in the coal mine. And what's happening here in Richland Center could happen to anybody, any campus across this state. And I don't mean to be trite or dismissive. I'm trying to use a little bit of humor, because if I don't, I'm just going to go berserk.
This was, in my mind, a planned dismantling of the campus because the 4 years were in financial trouble, and they also wanted the territory. We had students right from the area. We had a large group of students from the Milwaukee inner school area. We had a good connection with them. We had over 50 international students at our campus during this time. They got a complete university experience because we had developed having a diverse population in this county at this campus. And the community totally appreciated that too and was very supportive. We're mentors for these international students.
I kind of thought things were looking sour by 2018. It felt like things were on the decline. They were always talking about the struggles with enrollment.
I tried to contact the Platteville campus and say, this is the programs, this is who you contact, this is how we got the students here, this is somebody that will work getting host families from. They completely refused to do that.
To have your international director said, don't talk to people from other countries. I mean, this is just bonkers.
We were naive, to be honest. Here we're complaining, but not really realizing how much were being dismantled and how organized it was. When you applied to go to the campus, you did not apply to go to Richland. You applied to go to UW-Platteville. It was very difficult to find on the internet how you would get UW-Richland. When they got their acceptance letter, it did not say UW-Richland, it said UW-Platteville acceptance.
The recruiters were from Platteville, and they were saying, oh, I'm here from UW-Platteville. Here's our information. P.S. We have 2 branch campuses called UW-Platteville-Richland and UW-Platteville-Baraboo County.
I started contacting it and finding out that everybody was having this problem.
It used to be you had someone from Richland Center going out to Kickapoo High School, to Lafarge High School, to Weston, Hillsborough, and saying, hey, come to UW-Richland. But that stopped in 2018. And that never sunk in with administration either. Or they didn't want to hear it.
We had no marketing either. I mean, none.
Our foundation offered to pay for a Richland-only recruiter, and Platteville said no.
I mean, to think that we're going to pay in a day and age when Republicans in the legislature are clamoring for money and the education takes too much money. Here is something that Republicans should love. Self-funded, small business, essentially stepping up and saying, we'll pay for a recruiter, and the university is told no.
A gentleman who was running for the state Senate sort of knew that we were having problems, and he contacted a few people and said, we need a Friends of the Campus. And mostly it was people who had been staff at the campus before and a couple faculty.
From my end, it was first meeting with a group of like 12 or 16 people in the community. And Linda and I did that, with this group of people. And we basically said, what do we want to do?
So we started having coffees and teas for parents and adults in the community who were hearing all these negative things about the campus to try to turn that into a positive.
And then we started a petition online. We started a Facebook group. We ordered yard signs and did press releases. We started meeting with the students, and the students were very eager and interested to help. So we went to a UW Board of Regents meeting with a group of 12 students, met with Rothman.
No one in the upper system was really looking at what was really best for the students.
What are we going to lose if we don't have these campuses in a place like Richland Center?
So then November 22nd, Jay Rothman came out and gave the dictate that they would be closing the campus.
This announced closure is not a failure of anybody locally in the Richland Center. They have done everything and more not to get here, and yet we're here. So where did this happen? Clearly Platteville, clearly system, clearly Republicans in the state legislature.
I went to I went to the University of Iowa, so I was at a huge college campus. I only went because because one of my relatives wanted me to go there, but I kind of self-recruited myself. What was happening at UW Richland is they had staff going out into the local high schools and inviting the kids to come. They would actually meet the kids and ask them to come, and they would encourage kids who weren't necessarily college material. They said, you're capable of this. Come to this campus because this campus has very personal one-on-one attention, has small class sizes, plus look where it's located. Then I would meet people and they would say, or they would write letters and they'd say, I would have never gone to college had it not been for that person reaching out to me and telling me I could do it. I did this, and then I went out and had a career, and I came back to Richland Center because I wanted to give back. I opened up a business. I just met one lady, or talked to one lady a couple months ago, and she told me that her son was enrolled at UW Richland. It closed, and now he's working at Walmart. He's not in college anymore.
This has been going on for years, and it's always been, well, we don't have enough funds to stay a structural deficit. There is a $6.5 billion, with a B, $billion surplus in the state, and yet they are starving Richland on the vine.
I mean, Wisconsin's funding for the state university system is abysmal.
Like, we want the Wisconsin ID in theory, but good Lord, we don't want to pay for it. Well, we either want it or we don't. All budget decisions are priorities. So what are we spending money on as a state?
You could look at a campus that has, not very many students today and say, well, let's invest in that campus and let's promote that campus and let's try to increase the enrollment. The notion that we can't afford to do that is ridiculous.
You're watching an educational system being torn apart by people who don't understand that the difference between an investment and an expense. And Wisconsin's communities are suffering and will continue to suffer until that changes.
What if we took a few $1 million and said, let's invest in this campus and see what we can do here. This is a community that needs this school.
That's large, small, medium, and one extra large.
It's awesome to see our Richland family again. And I use family because that was what this campus was. My mom taught here, or worked here, I should say, in the late 90s. My dad went here in the early 90s, and they both said the same thing, that it was just an awesome vibe, tight-knit community around the campus, and that's something that's unmatched. These donors, they're not only wanting and hoping for kids to go to college, but they're also advocating.
People taught me why a college campus was so important in a town of 5,000 people. I didn't realize it at the time. And I think in hindsight, I thought it probably would have helped me if I would have had somewhere like this to go. That's the value of a campus like this. And I don't think people in administration understand that.
When you take an organization that's already very lean and then say, all right, well, we're cutting all of this out, there's no fat to trim. It is a testament to the dedication and work of the people who were here that the system managed to continue at all. It's a very dedicated group of people, and they worked very hard and over and above the call.
When these campuses are shut down, especially in the smallest communities, it's the state, it is the University of Wisconsin system basically saying, you don't matter to us.
The UW Colleges has never been about serving only top talent or as only for the best and brightest. We cultivate and we grow talent in the places that we are. We serve the needs of the communities and the surrounding areas where we're located, and we bring what a UW education has to offer to those places.
I keep going back to the 2017 Board of Regents meeting, where Holly Hassel valiantly defended the Wisconsin idea, and where President Ray Cross proposed dismantling the UW colleges and merging them with the four-year universities, where the regents overwhelmingly voted to approve Ray Cross's plan.
Some have said that we need to slow down. They identify risk in the proposal. I see opportunities and say full steam ahead.
Where all of the chancellors lined up to claim it was a great idea. At the time, all but one of the regents on the board had been appointed by Republican Governor Scott Walker. These same regents, with their families, had donated more than $100,000 to Walker's political campaigns. Together, these appointees and their families donated about $212,000 to Republican state candidates between 2010 and 2016. None of them had any relevant higher education experience when they were appointed. The political donors / regents who dismantled the UW colleges were attorneys and bankers and more attorneys and, wait for it, more attorneys. And while there's no clear evidence that their donations are the reason they were appointed, one thing became strikingly clear. These regents did not care about the Wisconsin idea, and they had no business making decisions about higher education.
You know, when I was a faculty rep to the Board of Regent meetings, we would sit and have lunch with some of these regents. And I'll never forget, sometime toward the end, sitting with one of these regents who was talking with a faculty member about students who struggle with math. And her whole attitude was just like, well, if they can't even do 8th grade math, why are they even going to college? Just had this total contempt for the idea that a student who had math skills to make up just shouldn't even be thinking of college. Like, that was just out of the question for them. Why were we even talking about that?
It should come as no surprise that when UW President Ray Cross retired, the board replaced him with an attorney who lacked any higher education experience. And after closing UW Richland, President Rothman's next target was UW Washington County.
My experience transitioning from my high school to UW Washington County, it was borderline seamless. When I first started looking for schools, I went the conventional route and I decided, hey, maybe I'll try Platteville, maybe I'll try La Crosse. Then my mom had directed me, hey, maybe you should try a 2-year school, maybe you should save a little bit of money, you should live from home, try to go that route. A lot of my high school friends were going there as well. And I just figured that it was a pretty good place to start. I didn't know what I wanted to do. So how do I decide which school's best for me, other than, getting some gen eds out of the way and buying some time? To go and use the 2-year college as a stepping stone, it was wonderful. I thought that I was in a way better position. I was way better prepared. Not only did they focus on the transition from high school to college, but also the transition from a 2-year school to a 4-year school. It's not so much that it defined who I was, but if I go back to a quote from Socrates, is that education is not the filling of a vessel, but it's the igniting of a flame.
I didn't have a really good experience in high school, so I was very hesitant about going to college to begin with. And I was recommended to go here. And I feel like it was a really good choice for me because it's like a stepping point into the college experience.
I came 3 times, visiting the area, getting to know Wisconsin, and I liked it. I liked it, and the people they were nice and welcoming and motivating, and yes, you can do this, and you can go there, and you can study this. Everything was positive. Everything was, yes, you can. It's a can-do attitude. So I was like, that's what I need.
I applied not exactly happily because I didn't really want to be at a 2-year school. I had hopes that I would go to a 4-year school and teach there. I knew I didn't want to be at an R1. I wanted to teach. But, and they kept on bugging me. You haven't turned in your application. All right. And so I did get the job, and I loved it.
I love the students. The students were great. I love what I'm doing. I love music. It's my life. The other thing is, because it's a small campus, it's a really collegial place. So some of my best friends have been, right now in the art department, in the psychology department. They've since retired, but just other departments, and we can talk about stuff.
Almost all of the students are people who don't really believe that they can make it in college, right? They're first generation, maybe they're lower income. They've got lots of other things going on. They might have some mental issues, family issues, and they're having to pay for it themselves. So if they want to do it, they'd better really want to do it.
I don't think that I would have made it. I'm not saying it would have been harder. I don't think I would have made it if it weren't for UW Washington County. I would have been absolutely
It wasn't too overwhelming. I made a lot of really good friends here. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. It did feel very different from high school. The environment is a lot different, and because it is a smaller campus, there's less people, but I feel like that makes the community all that much stronger. I think I would have tried to go to college at one of those bigger campuses, but I don't think I would have ended up in a very good place. I was not doing very well mentally at the time, and that I feel like one of those bigger college environments straight out of high school would not have been good for me the same way that this was. I genuinely think that this was the only way for me.
I was supposed to go for psychology, and thanks to public speaking with Professor Yogerst and going for communications.
Like all the other leadership at that fateful 2017 Board of Regents meeting, UW-Milwaukee Chancellor Mark Money praised the dismantling of the two-year colleges.
And what we've got are students who want to succeed. And that's what I can tell you we're committed to, and that's what this transition is really a lot about. So I support it because of what it means for student success.
Under the plan, UWM would take control of both UW-Waukesha and UW-Washington County, which was located in the northwest town of West Bend. The problems started immediately.
I think one of the first steps of the merger with Milwaukee was that the provost, and I think it was the provost first who came from Milwaukee, and then the chancellor. And it was pretty clear, partially because I'd already had some interactions with some sort of cantankerous Milwaukee faculty, and their reaction to us was we were basically the country hicks, and they couldn't believe that any of us did any type of research. I don't think there was a point at which UWM, they never wanted us, and they were very, very clear about that. But we heard from people in that meeting that the then provost had actually gone around to the departments and apparently the programs as well and said, don't worry, we're going to silo these people so they won't have anything to do with you.
So we went for several years without any recruitment at all. And then, what a surprise, our enrollments went down.
The community outreach, it was so necessary. And if you give it to somebody who just doesn't care, why would it be successful?
Without adequate support from UW-Milwaukee or the Regents, the Washington County campus enrollment numbers continued to decline. And then in October 23, it reached its inevitable conclusion.
Dear colleague Rachel Barger, she caught me after my first class and said, there's something in your email. I want to let you know. And I'm like, oh God. She said, they're going to close this campus. She said, I wanted you to not find that out by yourself. I was like, thanks. So then I go to my office and she goes off to her class and I read this thing and, I'm in shock. And within half an hour, I heard from Oxford University Studies in the Enlightenment that they were going to publish my second book.
A celebrated English professor whose books were published by Oxford University. A music professor who translated German cantatas by teaching himself how to read centuries-old handwriting. These are just two of the teachers who brought the Wisconsin idea to Washington County through community concerts. Now they were struggling with the news that their campus would soon cease to exist. No one felt it more than the students, who immediately noticed a change.
Within the next couple of months, there was almost no people showing up to any events, no people trying to organize events. I had to stop a couple of my clubs even because nobody was showing up anymore, so it was almost impossible for me to run. Even though I tried to keep stuff going, it was very hard with that knowledge in mind. And with everybody else feeling the same way, it's hard to even try to care. It's a very depressing atmosphere. Nobody feels motivated to do anything because it's closing. They don't feel like it's worth it. So the livelihood on campus is definitely almost gone now.
It's cold here. After hearing about the fact that we're going to be closed, the librarians all found jobs. Good for them, because they were not going to be absorbed into Milwaukee. There are more closed doors. Like, there might be people here sometimes, but they're just kind of exhausted. The students, we have no food here. We barely have anything in the machines, even soda. We were always a commuter school, but there's no reason to stay here between classes. And it hit me the hardest when I went to the library and I look at these stacks, empty of books.
So tell me now what is the world? So tell me now what is the world? So tell me what it is. My dear young friend, the world is now, my dear young friend, the world is now a mess, yeah, yeah, it is a mess, a mess, a mess, a mess, a disgusting mess. The world is now a mess, just a stinking mess, just a stinking mess. Just a messy mess, yeah, yeah, it is my child. Yeah, 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 so it really is, yeah, 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 so it really is, yeah, yeah, yeah.
The closest campuses to home that had the stuff required for my bachelor's degree are like an hour away at least. I could commute 2 hours a day, every day, but that's a bit too much for me.
It's a lost cause because back in fall 2023, I thought I can stay here until I finish my associates. But once in February, they said, no, it's done. We're not going to open. We're not going to try anything else. But you can go to Waukesha. No.
Waukesha campus was going to be having a bachelor's program for psychology, and I'm majoring in psychology, so that was a really good opportunity for me. It was my best option financially, it was the closest to home, and even though it would have been very similar in prices to the main campus, it would still be cheaper for me because I wouldn't have to live on campus. It was easy to commute. Now, we've recently found out that the Waukesha campus is also closing. There's not a whole lot of community colleges in the area anymore, and even the ones that are don't have these programs.
At the end of the semester, the community had one last event on campus to celebrate its history and mourn its closure. They even had an amazing local cover band play, and I'd love for you to hear them, but I can't afford the song licenses. Attendees could learn more about the campus's history and the impact it had on the community over the years. Example after example of just how valuable this place was. People eulogized. UWM merchandise was given away. No one wanted their picture taken with the Panther.
The population that we served were not necessarily students who thought about college. This was an opportunity to have access. Going to UW-Madison or going to UW-Milwaukee or even going to UW-Whitewater is daunting. But if you can say, I'm going to continue to live at home, I'm going to continue to work part-time wherever I've been working in high school, and I'll take these classes, and I will encounter faculty in small classes, and they're going to know who I am, and they're going to pay attention to me, and they'll provide the help that I need. And within a semester or two, I realize I can do this.
So I'm at La Crosse in a lecture hall of about 300 kids, and I have a question. So I raise my hand. Keep raising my hand, keep raising my hand, keep raising my hand. And the professor kept looking at me, kept on seeing me and everything like that, and just didn't call me or acknowledge me. And I said, excuse me, I have a question. And he goes, if you have a question, you need to come by during my office hours. You don't ask questions in a pit class. And I eventually said, sir, I have work during this. I can't come by during your office hours. And the last time that I hopped in line, I didn't get a chance to answer my question. And he said, well, then you can read about it in the material. And I went back and forth with him, and I said, sir, I don't think that this serves the Wisconsin idea. And this didn't earn me any points with him, but when he said, what's the Wisconsin idea? I said, why don't you fucking Google it? You didn't like that too much.
I was thinking when I first started, I was like, oh, this is like a bad breakup, because one side is like, what's going on? The other side is like, it's not you, it's me. But I think now, I feel like the best metaphor at this point is it feels more like a really weird serial killing.
And it's like,
yeah, that's a little better actually. That involves some kind of hostage element to it.
Yeah. Or I was also thinking like, it's almost like the campuses are in a hospital. They're all in varying degrees of care. And someone is just going around killing each of, like, euthanizing them, no matter how healthy they are. You know what I mean?
Right. But rather on the basis of what the support apparatus is. Like, well, it doesn't really matter if that person's sick. They just don't have very good equipment in that room. So, sorry.
UW-Washington County enjoyed local support for more than 60 years as it underwent multiple expansions and renovations. But by 2023, county leadership had little interest in fighting to keep the campus alive. There was no community lifeline when it mattered. The closest Washington County got was a task force convened by County Executive Josh Schoeman. This task force on higher education consisted entirely of local business leaders and did not include a single expert on higher education, nor did it include a single voting member from the UWM campus. It painted a damning picture of higher ed's alleged failures. The report stated that UWM budget cuts happened every year, omitting the size of the cuts and who was responsible. It talked about competition with the local tech school, but never once explained why this competition is even allowed. It mentioned a lack of local outreach and recruitment, but never explained the role of those devastating budget cuts. Students were referred to as customers. It mentioned the cost of tuition, but didn't explain why tuition went up as the UW budget was cut. It praised the local tech school, but it didn't mention the $55 million budget increase the school got through a local tax referendum. UW-Washington County was never allowed to raise money in this way. The report section on UW-Washington County's strengths was less than a third of a page long. And in the end, after all this hard work, the task force's big recommendation was another merger, this time with the local tech school. One of the overarching messages is that schools must be nimble in order to address businesses' needs and to close the skills gap. What is the skills gap, you ask? To put it simply, the skills gap is the difference between what skills an employee needs to successfully do a job and what skills the employee actually has. Surveys of executives and businesses consistently show that skills shortages make hiring problematic. Education is always the first to be blamed for this problem. But does the skills gap even exist?
No, yeah, it's completely false. There's never been any shortage of skilled workers in any sort of broad sense in modern American history. Business will refer to a skills gap if they advertise at whatever low wage they want to pay and prospective employees aren't beating the doors down. Then the Chamber of Commerce and business leaders will go to the press, and the press will report without really asking any questions. There's just not enough skilled workers. I mean, if there were truly a shortage of skilled workers, so many of our wages would be going up and up and up and up. And the problem in education is we've internalized that for 30 or 40 years, right? We all believe that's the case. The press, by and large, believes that's the case. And here we are getting rid of liberal arts majors and adding, STEM and technical fields on the basis of a whole bunch of assumptions that if you look at, official jobs data, official labor market data for just a couple minutes, you see are just complete myths. That's why we assume that higher ed is failing, because there are lots of us that have stagnant wages, because there are lots of us that work in jobs that are low paid and very difficult, and we blame the education system for that. Business wants the education system to serve the interests of business.
We fund public education because we believe it's a good thing. At some point, I don't know exactly when, the language about higher education shifted. And the argument for going to college was not that it was a good thing to do and you would emerge a better person and a more thoughtful person and society would benefit from that. It was about individual advancement. I'm going to college to get a degree so I can get a better job and earn more money.
I don't like the idea that a university system is nothing more than a taxpayer-funded corporate apprenticeship program. I think that's demeaning. We're not designed as trade schools. Again, there's nothing wrong with trade schools, but that's not what we are. The whole point of a liberal education is that you become a well-rounded citizen of a free republic, and that's worthwhile. And even if all you end up doing is becoming a better community member, someone who can go up and organize book clubs or whatever, that's a worthwhile goal.
You want to get something out of your investment, but I also got one of those really useless liberal arts degrees. I got a degree in English, right? I'm not supposed to be able to find a job. Well, guess what? I've been gainfully employed, gotten many promotions. I'm a leader at my work.
So you get this much broader education that makes you this well-rounded citizen. And that kind of education also enables you to question things a little more, which may be one of the reasons why people in power don't like it.
Then the recurring argument, which there's really no merit at all to, is that the schools aren't preparing students for the economy, for the jobs that exist, and therefore the schools that now higher ed are failing for that reason.
I'm still thinking about the county executive at the Board of Regents meeting who's like, Foxconn, we've got to be ready. This is
my God. Right?
I feel like
you gotta lead with that somewhere in this.
It's going in.
And the big name in the room is called Foxconn. It is a paradigm shift and a catalyst that is going to change this economy like you wouldn't believe.
Wisconsin conservatives are obsessed with turning our universities into trade schools. And no one exemplifies that more than former Governor Scott Walker. In 2015, while he was cutting the budget for higher education, he attempted to rewrite the Wisconsin idea, which is enshrined in state law. He removed the mission to extend the boundaries of the university and to stimulate society. He removed the purpose of research and dissemination to improve people's lives. He entirely cut the emphasis on the search for truth. Most importantly, he inserted a new all-important goal of higher education: to meet the state's workforce needs. Walker tried to lie his way out of the ensuing scandal and was caught red-handed. And thankfully, his plan was thwarted. But this Republican obsession with demonizing higher education matters, because if you look at who represents the districts where these two-year campuses are located, nearly all of them are represented by Republicans who have stayed quiet about the closures or, worse, have criticized the colleges that have been such a crucial lifeline for their communities.
For many decades, conservatives and also just business generally have been sort of beating up on education generally, higher ed or K-12, depending on the context.
I think a lot of it is because if you educate people properly, you teach them how to question things. Questioning leads to change. Conservatives, by definition, are very suspicious of change. That's how you define a conservative in many ways. They want to keep things the same, go back to the gold. Where's the golden age? The golden age is in the past. The job of a conservative is to conserve as much of that golden age as possible against the ravages of degenerative change. On the other side, you have the liberals. The job of the golden age is in the future. The job of the liberal is to liberate the present from the dead hand of the past and move forward into something else, which pretty much by definition means change.
All of this is not to say that conservatism is bad, but when you put conservatives who dislike higher education in charge of higher education, you end up with predictable results. Set aside our own Governor Walker and his region appointees and look instead at Florida. Nebraska Republican Ben Sasse was put in charge of the University of Florida in 2023. In his first year as president, he spent nearly $17.3 million. Part of his administrative bloat came from new jobs for people in his political circle. A new administrative position paid $396,000. A new communications position paid $432,000. Another hire was a Republican insider named Penny Schwinn, who made $367,000. Some of these new hires even worked remotely and did not reside in Florida. At the much smaller New College of Florida, which has an enrollment of about 700 students, Governor Ron DeSantis appointed right-wing provocateur Chris Rufo to its board of trustees, along with a number of other prominent conservative voices who lacked any higher education expertise. Rufo is notorious for stoking the flames over LGBTQ issues in schools and critical race theory. He manipulates the press into treating him like a prominent thinker, and then he brags on Twitter like a cliched supervillain about what he's really doing. For example, Rufo states, quote, "We will eventually turn critical race theory toxic, as we put all of the various cultural insanities under that brand category. The goal is to have the public read something crazy in the newspaper and immediately think critical race theory." Rufo has also suggested that conservatives stop using the term drag queens in schools and instead use the term trans stripper in order to shift the debate to sexualization. This is not journalism. It's just textbook manipulation of language designed to make people feel a certain way, like when administrators refer to students as customers in order to make education feel more like a business. In Rufo's case, much of his energy is spent convincing Americans that our public schools are, quote, hunting grounds for sexual predators because teaching kids about LGBTQ issues leads to, quote, grooming. So you can see why Rufo caught the attention of Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Rufo's work at New College has been dedicated to eradicating what he and his colleagues consider the woke agenda, and peppers his public invective with violent phrases like, quote, laying siege to the institutions, to describe his attacks on higher education. New College, meanwhile, has seen massive faculty resignations and more than a quarter of its students left after the right-wing takeover. Rufo's big accomplishment was eliminating the gender studies program. This past summer, all the program's books were unceremoniously dumped in the trash, prompting outcry from students and the public. Chris Rufo responded by claiming they were just throwing out the trash. Ron DeSantis' press secretary lauded the move. The blowback got so bad, the college eventually issued a statement claiming it was required by law to throw out the books. You'll be shocked to learn that that was a lie. Florida Statute 273 clearly states the books could have been donated or given away. Perhaps Rufo and his colleagues should take a research methods class.
All of the people telling you that they're losing their country. In some sense, they're right. The country's changing, but it's always been changing. And the thing that they're wrong about is that it was ever theirs to begin with.
Even with a Democratic governor, the Wisconsin Republicans continued their assault on higher education. In 2023, they voted to remove $32 million from the universities in order to punish them for implementing diversity, equity, and inclusivity programs on campuses. Republican leader Robin Vos, who has stated publicly that he's embarrassed to be a graduate of UW-Whitewater, had this to say: DEI is the new religion to the left. They don't go to church on Sunday, but they have no problem using taxpayer dollars to evangelize on every college campus across the state. We have to stop, put our foot down, and not allow it to continue. The Republican legislature then held university staff pay raises hostage until the universities agreed to remove DEI positions. Robin Vos then celebrated his victory by quoting Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. No, I am not making that up.
I think there's that sense of the Wisconsin idea, which is if you take it at its actual word, it's very radical. The idea that the university has a function to go out and train experts and make them change the world. And if you don't want the world to be changed, that's a problem.
One thing I've learned a lot from these consolidations, and certainly my own, and what I have learned is that we must be empathetic.
UW Fond du Lac's final operating semester was spring 2024, the same semester as UW Washington County. The story at this point feels cliched. They merged with a four-year that didn't understand their mission. Resources were cut, the enrollment plummets, and then it's closed down. And on my way to Fond du Lac, listening again to the 2017 Board of Regents meeting when the UW colleges were dismantled, another chancellor expressed confidence that the Wisconsin idea would be preserved.
It's going to be powerful to the communities in which we extend, in that they will have a four-year UW associated with communities that heretofore had not.
There was no way to stop what was going to happen. But the thing that was, to me, the most frustrating was that the widespread, the lack of ability to sort of critically engage with what was happening. Either the right people weren't at the table, they weren't asking the right questions, there were these certain kinds of blind spots people had about, whether it was regents or executive leadership. People who spent decades at these campuses also deserve closure, right? There were people who spent 40, 50 years teaching in the college's campuses and writing about it and supporting students and creating programs and making degrees and making centers and just all the things that happened, creatively and innovatively to support students. And it just disappeared. But now having been for 6 years at different four-year universities, it's kind of night and day when I think about how dedicated at the colleges we were to students and to teaching and to they're just really that was what we were there for. That was what we were there to do. And people who were there and stayed there did that because they loved it,
Your stuff is all right there. And so when you are ready to go, you're just going to come up front and grab your stuff. Over here. Okay. So fire extinguisher over there. Fire extinguisher just in case. So. Welcome everybody to our final class celebration. Obviously, we know the campus is closing. The very last class ever to run here is our Chem 106 lab today. And these are my students that are going to put on a little bit of a chemistry magic show for you guys. So just want to say really quickly about these guys, I could not be more proud of this class.
All of my uncles on my dad's side, including my aunt on my dad's side, and my aunt on my mom's side, all came here specifically. My parents met here in 1989, I believe it was, in their first class.
Yeah, I don't know if I would have thought about Oshkosh. I wanted to stay close to home, so if this wasn't here, I don't even know really what I would have done. Might not have if I went to college.
Yeah, I went to work at a factory and I didn't like it.
No,
yeah.
It's awful.
Yeah.
When I was last working, I was in a factory and I was just thinking, there's not as much to do here. I want to go do something else, but if Fond du Lac wasn't open, I don't think I would have jumped into Oshkosh's arms that quickly.
Even just coming here the first time, when you come to a college, sometimes you get the nice side of people. And at some colleges, that goes away as soon as you come for your first day. Here, it didn't go away.
I wasn't sure in high school if I wanted to go to a university, and I acted like it. Fond du Lac gave me an opportunity to make something of myself, something better. I need to put the ammonia in here. And what you're gonna see a reaction right now, and it's gonna go dark. I messed up, man. I messed up. I wasn't good. And Fond du Lac was my way out. It was my way out of, just moving up, I guess. And now that it's gone, other people aren't going to be able to have that chance. You know, and now I have to transfer out when I'm not done yet, you know, and I think I'll be fine, but, you know, things happen.
I grew up in poverty, actually out on a farm in rural Fond du Lac County. I was always told that college was not a thing for people like me, right? So when I actually graduated from high school in 2004 and my classmates were all like going to campuses, that was not a thing. I'm first generation, so no one in my family had a history of going to college. But after 2 years of not going to school, this is going to sound really silly, I felt like my life was over. Like, I just felt like that was what my life was going to be. I was going to live in poverty, and I was told that I was going to be really lucky to, like, get married and have children. I remember people telling me, like, you are a waste. Like, you have no value. Like, you're never going to contribute anything. And so when I turned 20 on my birthday, I literally just woke up that day and I was like, if this is what life is going to be, I don't know how to keep doing this. And I just felt like something had to change. And so I actually went back to the high school that I had graduated from. And I went to the school counselor that we had. And I walked into her office that day on my birthday. And I was like, I need to do something. And she was like, you're really smart. You should go to college. And I was like, that's not a thing. And she's like, no, you should. And she's like, have you heard of UW-Fond du Lac? And I was like, no. And she's like, listen, this is going to be the perfect campus for you. Like, this is a place that is designed for kids like you. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to college, right? And I was so nervous. I was so nervous because I didn't know what any of this was. Like, this is like an alien planet, right? Like, I didn't know people who had gone to college. Like, in my family history has history of people not really graduating high school, right? So, like, this is so foreign to me. I didn't know how to speak this language. And so they had this really special program where we got to do a 3-day intensive with a bunch of different professors from all of these different backgrounds who taught us the basics of, like, how to show up here, how to write a paper, how to come to class, like how to just do, like, just those really basic things we take for granted. I just met, like, the most amazing people. Like, literally, Elaine Peterson. She walked in on the very first day dressed as Mary Shelley because we read the book Frankenstein for the class, and I love to read. I actually ended up getting an English degree. And she walked in and totally in character started acting like Mary Shelley.
I thought, why don't I talk about Mary Shelley, who is an absolutely fascinating figure. And I have friends who are theater costumers, and I asked one of them, how long do you think it would take to make me, a period specific, let's say 1816 with the Empire, like what you think of when you think of a Jane Austen movie, those Empire waists with the puffy sleeves. And then she made me a coat to go over the top of it.
And that was the beginning. That was like, I walked onto this campus and I met Mary Shelley.
I picked the fabrics. And, it was sensational. it was a lot of fun.
Elaine was like so inspired by the fact that I wanted to dig into the why, into the history, and into the context. And after the class, like, she pulled me in and we had a chat, and I talked about how nervous I was because I still thought that this wasn't the right place for me because I didn't know what belonging was, and I didn't have community at that point. And she was like, "You're gonna love it." That very first day, I remember Elaine actually talked about the motto of the university, which is UW-Fond du Lac, the best start for the life you want. I actually think about that a lot because for me, it absolutely was. Like, I am the person I am today. I have the life that I have today. I have the career that I have today. I have the relationships that I have today because of this place.
We were here to provide the best start for the life that students wanted. We were here to provide access to a high-quality University of Wisconsin education. All of us worked with that mission in mind, that we were here to educate anybody who walked through our doors and said, "I would like to go to college." We serve first-generation students. We served students who worked full-time jobs. I don't even know how many students I had who worked third shift. They reached out to this place as a lifesaver, like a life ring, and they grabbed on, and we pulled them up, and we helped to launch them into teaching careers. I have students who are pharmacists now. I have a number of students who teach in high schools in this area. They teach chemistry, they teach history, they teach English. They're educating the next generation of kids who are now not going to have this as a resource. I'm so angry. There's a phrase in Japanese that is shikata kanai. It means it cannot be helped. There are certain things that are beyond your ability to control, and you worked as hard as you could. It just didn't go the way that you wanted it to, and it can't be helped. And so I had that that phrase has been on repeat pretty much daily.
I will never not be angry and sad about what happened. I never got over the investment of the work and the time and the people and the community that, I had spent 16 years at. Losing these campuses is just going to have an indelible impact on a lot of these, a lot of the communities. Like they played a central role, and they gave a lot of students of a lot of different kinds a way to access higher education.
We live in an age of performative cruelty where it's somehow seen as virtuous to pull up the ladders after you succeed so that other people don't. And I watch the campuses being closed when they could have been saved. It wouldn't have taken a whole lot to keep these campuses open. The Enlightenment had this idea that if you had perfect communication, that if everybody understood what was really going on, that you could create a utopia, that everybody would suddenly pitch in and make things better. And that assumes a certain amount of goodwill.
I'm going to call the regents first, I think.
I'm sorry, but I am unable to take your call at the moment. Please leave me your name, number, and message, and I'll call you back at the earliest opportunity. Thank you for calling Polsinelli.
Hi, this is for Tracy Klein.
Timmy Higgins is currently unavailable. Please leave a message after the tone.
Hi, Tim. Hi, Mark. My name is Ken Brosky. I'm shooting a documentary about the closure of the two-year college campuses in Wisconsin.
Brian Stiles' office, how can I help you?
Hi, I was wondering, how would I go about sitting down with Brian Stile to do an interview?
I would have to pass along the request to his scheduler,
Okay.
And perhaps his communications director.
So,
what is your name?
Sure. My name is Ken Brosky.
All right, I'll go ahead and pass along your request, and then I would say likely either the scheduler or the communications director would be the ones to reach back out to you regarding his availability. Good morning, Walter Riley.
Hello. Is it possible to talk to John Bailing?
And may I tell him who you would be speaking with?
Yes, my name is Ken Brosky. I'm shooting a documentary about the closure of the 2-year campuses in Wisconsin. And I was hoping to talk to him about possibly doing an interview.
Okay, one moment.
Thank you.
The person at extension 014 is unavailable.
Thank you for calling Washington County, the office of the county executive.
Hello, my name is Ken Brosky. I'm shooting a documentary about the closure of the 2-year campuses in Wisconsin. If you could, give me a call back. Thank you. All right. I'm going to wait a few minutes and see if anybody calls me back. Because I don't have shit to do anyway.
We saw solar babies, so you know what that means.
None of the chancellors, county executives, or former regents returned my calls. It's hard to find closure when the killers remain silent. And while I was waiting, I fired off an email to every single Wisconsin legislator representing the districts where these campuses are closing. I asked 3 very simple questions, questions that I think everyone involved in this mess should have to answer on the record. The only Wisconsin legislator to email me back was Jerry O'Connor, the Republican representing Fond du Lac in the state assembly. He responded to my question about the Wisconsin budget surplus by saying, "This excess money belongs to the people and not to the government or the governor to pay out to their pet projects." Shockingly, he openly admitted to the dismantling of the UW colleges when he continued, "The decision to close 2-year campuses has been a process that began when the 2-year campuses were merged into the 4-year campuses." On the question of the budget cuts that devastated Wisconsin's universities, Representative O'Connor said, "Funding was cut by Governor Walker because the UW administration had created a secret $1 billion hidden account. The UW system has been operating with the funds they kept hidden from the public." This is in reference to a pseudo-scandal from nearly a decade ago that was never accurately reported to begin with. Finally, on the question of community outreach, Representative O'Connor told me, "By and large, there is disappointment at the loss of the campus here. On the other hand, there is a raw realization that the public was no longer buying what several 2-year campuses were selling." I had a lot of follow-up questions, but there was no time. On the same day I was cold calling the killers, UW-Milwaukee's chancellor, Mark Money, announced a plan to fire every single member of the faculty at the UW-Washington County and Waukesha campuses. His rationale was that it would be impossible to move the extra faculty to UW-Milwaukee after the campuses were closed. This unprecedented mass layoff would essentially end the careers of more than 30 disciplinary experts. The faculty had a chance to weigh in during a summer Senate meeting, and they refused to let Chancellor Mark Money off easy. UWM faculty spoke up. Washington County faculty spoke up. Waukesha faculty spoke up. Even Neil Krause was there remotely to fight the good fight. And in the end, UWM faculty stood with their colleagues and voted to reject the chancellor's plan. It was a symbolic vote, but it sent a clear message to the newly appointed Board of Regents. The future is not set in stone. I wish I could say that there was a happy ending to this, but a week later, the Board of Regents met in Madison, and even though all of Scott Walker's appointees were long gone, the new regents appointed by Democratic Governor Tony Evers chose to approve the UWM chancellor's layoff plan with only one vote against. They didn't have to do this. They could have voted down the plan and told Chancellor Mark Money to find a way, any way, to preserve these faculty at the UWM campus. Instead, the regents chose to continue the disastrous policies that their predecessors began. But there are places where the Wisconsin idea lives on. An hour north of Madison, the Baraboo campus is receiving a $780,000 investment from Sauk County while it grows enrollment. This is a county that cares deeply about the Wisconsin idea and affordable access to higher education. At the Rock campus in Janesville, enrollment has climbed 3 years in a row thanks to new program offerings that include nursing and a bachelor's degree. The University of Wisconsin-Whitewater offers a level of support that other two-year campuses never received, and its chancellor believes in the two-year mission. And on multiple campuses across the state, one very special legacy of the UW colleges lives on. Wizard Academy, which was started by the UW college's faculty, continues to inspire new generations of kids every summer. Here is the Wisconsin idea in its purest form. There is no Excel spreadsheet to quantify the happiness of a child. There is no survey that tracks the economic impact of these special summer camps. There are no politicians celebrating all the hard work teachers do during their unpaid summer months. This is about bringing the university to the community. It's about having fun while learning. This is the magic that makes the Wisconsin idea so special. And we don't have to lose this. We're making a choice to close these campuses during a time when Wisconsin has a multi-billion-dollar budget surplus. We're letting it happen because we've been deceived into thinking that education must be run like a business. And the futures of a few dozen students here and there doesn't actually make much of a difference in the grand scheme of things. We can stop the closures. We can reverse them. But we have to fight back.